So I think we can all agree that if you were to start a business, your goal would be to beat your competitors, to get the most users buying or consuming your product as possible, and to make a lot of money. And I'm also betting that if you were to do all of that, you would not expect the end result to be getting sued by the government. But that is the situation Google finds itself in. Coming this Monday, there is a massive lawsuit dropping against the tech company, and it is the first of this kind we've seen since the late 1990s. The U.S. Department of Justice and a very large number of state attorneys general are filing a lawsuit against Google, claiming it has violated antitrust because of its search engine's dominance. Over 80% of searches are done through Google, but does that mean that they've broken the law or done something unethical? No, I think it just means people like Google. Count me among them. If a device doesn't come with Google Chrome already pre-downloaded, I'm downloading it. I don't want to use anything else. That's not because there aren't other competitors. That's not because I don't know about the other competitors. It is because I like Google best, as do most people. The US government's case is essentially that because Google makes good marketing deals with other companies like Apple or Android to be the first browser you encounter on their devices, they are partaking in anti-competitive practices. What? This is just basic marketing. Yes, Google might pay some companies to be the first browser you encounter on their devices, but it's not like you can't just change that if you want to. On an Apple iPhone, it literally takes 4 clicks of the finger to change your browser. On Safari, it takes 2 clicks. Google is a free product. Nobody's like holding you down and forcing you to use Google. And for the record, Google is competing even for those contracts. They're winning out with companies like Apple and Android because they're popular. That's what consumers want. This is basically like when you go in a grocery store and you look at the aisles, it's not an accident what products are where. Companies are paying grocery stores for better placements in their stores. Fruity Pebbles is at eye level because General Mills is paying a lot of money for you to see it over Kroger's brand on the floor. Consumers aren't stupid. They know they have choices and they're going to seek out the ones that are best for them, especially when the services are all free. Also, these browser agreements that they're making are not exclusive. Companies like Bing and Yahoo also pay Apple to be featured on Safari when you open up your phone. Antitrust is supposed to be used only when a company actually is a monopoly, which clearly Google is not, and when a company has used that monopoly power to harm consumers. That's called the Consumer Welfare Standard. It's how we've governed our economy and these kinds of questions for decades, and it works really well. It's one reason the US has such a great GDP, so much innovation, and it's why the tech sector has mostly exploded in the US exclusively. Capitalism works really, really well when you simply let it. Not only is Google not a monopoly and also obviously not harming consumers with these practices, what I find really interesting and honestly quite funny is that when companies go with a different search engine as their default, people still try to override it and go to Google. Going back to my history books briefly here, in 2014, when Mozilla chose to make Yahoo the default search engine, many people actually switched back to Google immediately. Microsoft also preloads the Edge browser on Windows and makes Bing their default search engine, and actually they make it way harder to change this setting than it is to change away from Google on Apple. But despite this, their users also still overwhelmingly seek out Google to the point where Google is the #1 search item on Bing worldwide. That is embarrassing for Bing. Furthermore, while Google definitely does have market dominance, it has a lot of competitors that are quickly encroaching on its territory. TikTok is actually now the #1 search engine for people under age 30. Something like 60% of initial searches for items originate on Amazon. And you have other platforms like Reddit and Twitter where people are regularly going for information before Google or before even traditional search engines. Again, capitalism, the free market, it works just fine if the government stays out of the way. Another part of this lawsuit that I find particularly insufferable, though, is that many of the state attorneys general are claiming that Google didn't do enough to help one of its competitors with its software. Yes, really. According to the state attorneys generals, they say that Google's Ads 360 didn't do enough to include more features for Microsoft ads to be as fast as Microsoft wanted, and instead, Google prioritized the needs of their customers. Companies are supposed to exist to serve the needs of their consumers, not their competitors. What kind of upside-down world or argument even is that? At every turn, Google very obviously is competing. It's just doing it very well, and they're ultimately winning. And at the end of the day, the government wants to be the one to pick winners and losers versus the market. They want to have more control over private industry. They want to have more control over the tech sector. And ultimately, they want to have more control over you and your data. Now, by all accounts, this is a terrible legal case. Most people do not expect the government to be successful. They are really reaching. But even if Google wins, they're still having to spend countless millions of dollars to defend themselves, hire attorneys, and ultimately just be shaken down for doing nothing more than succeeding at business and providing people with a quality they like, thereby making the world a better, more enjoyable place. This is honestly the kind of thing you see in Europe with their antitrust laws, where Google has actually gotten in trouble for doing things like ranking their own products first in search results. Which again, is just basic marketing, basic business strategies to succeed. Of course, you're going to preference your own products. But unfortunately, it seems many people in our government want our economy to look more like Europe's, where again, you won't find any tech companies. You won't find a very big GDP, and you certainly won't find a lot of economic growth. And that's because these kinds of policies are stifling to innovation. It's inexcusable that the government is wasting our money, our resources on this kind of bogus effort when they can't even fix the freaking roads. Frankly, I hope the government gets their ass handed to them in this lawsuit so they back off and stop doing this anti-capitalist crud. I'm sick of it. This lawsuit is as un-American as it gets.